Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to day 3 of junior camp. Hope you guys have learned a lot from playing around with your catapult or your Bernoulli airfoils today. That's what we made this morning. Hope you guys have been experimenting with those outside and inside, and you've learned a lot. And we're really excited about our guest speaker this afternoon. And to help me introduce him, once again, the Education Director for AMA, Kyle Jarris.
Hey, thanks for having me back again, Kyle Thiede. It was such a fun time this morning working on those Bernoulli airfoils. That was actually the first time I'd built one just out of paper, so it was fun for me to do. And of course, I had to take it outside and try it out a few times. I got to say, I like the flight pack version a little bit better, but there's a lot more experimentation that can be done on that paper one.
Yeah, there's a little pros and cons to both of them.
It's fun though.
Well, that's good to hear. And I'm really excited this afternoon about the guest speaker that we have. He has a lot of really cool things to tell us. Mr. Bryan Hastings, who I mentioned this morning, is a professional drone pilot, and he has a lot of really cool experiences to share with us. So welcome, Bryan. We're glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Kyle. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to get your perspective as a professional drone pilot, talking about some of the different aspects that you look at within your company as you go out on a job site and do what you do.
A lot of stuff we do dealing with construction can be a little hectic in planning the flights. A lot of construction happens in some pretty congested areas, so it gets pretty interesting and pretty fun.
Well, I was just going to say, I think you've got a cool presentation for us, Bryan. I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got there for us and getting an idea of what some of that stuff is. Sorry, I think I cut you off, Kyle T.
Oh, I was just going to say that some of the speakers that we've spoken to earlier in the week have talked about how they engage with model aviation as a hobby. And we talked about in our morning lessons about how we can engage with it as an educational tool. And we're really excited to hear about this other perspective, that it can also be the part of a profession and part of doing some really useful work.
Yes.
So I'm very excited to see the presentation as well.
Yeah. For me, the drones were more of an interest a few years ago when I was getting into the field, talking about new technologies that are used in construction, and did my own little research into it, and found out there was a lot of stuff we could do with it. Became pretty interested, and when I started working at my company, they started their own drone program, and I jumped at the opportunity, and then ended up becoming their lead drone pilot and also the instructor for our entire company. So.
Well, how many drone pilots does your company employ? Like, how many people have you been able to train and bring into that?
So far, we've had about 8 total, but currently we have 6 that are active. A few people have, moved on to other jobs in other areas and stuff like that. But we also have 2 more lined up that already has their Part 107 license, but we still need to go through some training with them and make sure that they're good to go. And all of our pilots also are all over the country in different offices. But right here in my particular office here in Indianapolis, we have 3 that are active. So
very cool. Well, I have to ask, can we see the drone that you work with? Do you have
yes.
Do you have a picture of that you'd be able to share with us?
Yes, I do.
Or
is it up on screen there? Okay, there we go. So the drone that we use in our industry is the DJI Phantom 4 Pro V2. And one of the reasons why we use this one is because of it's a smaller frame and it's easier to transport and take around. Plus, it's in the industry, it's one of the ones with the longer battery life. We can usually get a good 25 minutes out of a battery flight time, and it's got one of the best cameras for mapping. It's got a 4K video camera, so we can get some really good detailed shots of anything we need to for video. But it also has a 20 megapixel camera on it, which is very good for just regular photos. And when we do mapping, which you'll see some examples in the presentation, it helps us get a more accurate map so we can see everything that's going on the job site. And it's a pretty reliable drone too. It has a better receiver and transmitter. So some of the areas that we fly in, there's actually a lot of radio interference because you're dealing with steel buildings and steel things all over the place. So it helps cut through that interference because it's got a dual channel receiver and transmitter. So
Yeah, I'm sure
that's another
that's
reason why we
useful.
like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was seeing some of the photos and videos from earlier, and all those grids and structures, all the I-beams and the girders. I'm sure it's kind of a nightmare when it comes to flying.
Oh, yes, definitely. We also deal with tower cranes on job sites, so that's one of the things we got to be careful of and look at. And this drone does a pretty good job of getting us through a flight safely. So.
And one thing I'm noticing from some of the comments that our viewers are sharing with us is that some of them actually have a drone very similar to this that they fly recreationally. Do you also fly recreationally, or is this something that you keep strictly as a professional endeavor for you?
It's mostly a professional endeavor for me, but I have in the past taken this drone on a weekend and went flying at a park or something like that just for fun, and also because of situations, just to practice and get better at it so that I can handle situations more safely and make sure that we don't cause any accidents. Just that's always something that's a concern and something that we teach in our training is go have a little bit of fun with it, but get practice with it and make sure you know how it handles and understand how all of it functions.
Yeah, flying within that flight envelope of knowing not only what the aircraft can do, but what you as the pilot can do is very important.
Yes, definitely. One of the tests we kind of give pilots, or I do anyways, is I try and have them do figure eights so they can learn the controls of the drone. And if you can do figure eights with the drone pretty well around a couple objects, then you got a pretty good grasp on how the drone handles and put them in different simulated situations. So we through the training, we definitely drill into safety and procedures and emergency situations and all that.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of situations that you have to be prepared for in your work. This might be something that you talk about in the presentation that you have prepared, but can you give us kind of an idea of what kind of projects construction-wise you do work with? Are there any recent ones that have been particularly memorable, or are there any that you think about more than others?
Well, for us, AECOM Hunt is a big commercial construction company. We do our primary construction jobs are like stadiums. Like we've recently, in the past couple of years, finished up the Mercedes-Benz, the Atlanta Falcons Stadium was one of the ones that we built. We also built the Chargers and new stadium, the Chargers and Rams new stadium in LA. We also build airports. In those cases, though, I don't have any drone footage of that because we can't fly in airport airspace. But we do work on airports, building terminals and upgrading airports. Those are some of the bigger projects we do, but we also work on hospitals and hotels. I can actually got a slide here to show you, but here's some of the projects kind of more recently that we've either completed or some of them are still under construction. But these are some of our bigger, more recent projects that we've done.
And going back to some of the earlier comments, what I see in all of these is lots of concrete and lots of steel. So
Yes.
yeah, having something with a great reception is going to be super important.
Yes, we are also working on a jail, and we've had particular issues with that one because the building itself is taller than where we can stand and fly it from, and when we get to a certain point, we still deal with a little bit of interference from the building because it's such a massive concrete and steel building. So that's something we definitely look out for.
Well, so it sounds like that model aviation has kind of given you a very special career here, working with all these different very high profile projects, it looks like. Did you have an interest in aviation going into your career? Is this something that goes back to a long time for you, into your childhood?
Sort of. Actually, when I was growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be a pilot. The same old, want to be a fighter pilot or something like that. That's something I was looking into, but that never worked out for me. But I still went pretty close to that. I joined the Navy right out of high school, and I was in the United States Navy for 8 years. I was still fascinated. I always loved it when I was on the ship and we were cruising along with a carrier and watching all the jets take off and land on that. I can tell you, I spent a couple hours, just standing there outside watching the planes land and take off and do practice runs and formations. It was always fun to watch. Honestly, I never thought I'd be a licensed pilot, but then the opportunity came up to be a licensed drone pilot. So I guess eventually I reached my goal of being a pilot. So
Yeah, I think it counts.
pretty good. Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, what else did you have in the presentation to show us?
All right. Well, I already did sort of an intro, but I'll go ahead and kick this off right here. Like I said, I was in the Navy 8 years, and my job in the Navy was I was a navigator. So I was navigating all the ships I was stationed on across the oceans. I've been to close to 20 countries, probably a little more than that. Been on 5 deployments while I was in the Navy. After I got out, I went straight into Purdue. I was there for 4 years. I got my bachelor's degree in computer graphics technology. And my major, I specialized in what my job is a VDC engineer in construction. And when I was there at Purdue, there was one of my professors, we were talking about technology and construction, and how I was first introduced to drones into this was conversations with him and research we both kind of did together, and looking into cool things about drones and all the information we could get out of them and use them for construction, and piqued my interest. And then when I got to work here for AECOM for 4 years as a VDC engineer, um, I was approached about starting a drone program and asked if I wanted to join and be a part of that. And of course, I said yes. I was definitely interested in that, and ended up being one of the first 4 pilots that we had in the company, and got certified. And then I ended up taking over the whole drone program for Hunt, and I became the instructor. And part of that, being the instructor, I get to train all of our new pilots and go over all of the procedures and safety procedures and rules that we have within our own company. So as you can see here, we have at AECOM Hunt right now, we have 6 Part 107 licensed pilots fly drones for us. We have 3 in the Indy office. We have 1 in Dallas. We have 1 in Chicago, or soon to be in Chicago. And then we also have 1 out in LA. And then we have a couple more that are going to be going through our training program here pretty soon. But like I said, we have our own drone pilot certification program at our company. And we basically, once everybody gets their own license, their Part 107 license, they go through this training, and I work with them, and we actually go out and fly the drone, and I review all of our rules and procedures that we do. And just to kind of sum up some of that, one of the things that we do is every time we go to fly a project, we always create our own personal, like, in-house flight plan. The part of this flight plan is creating the plan that we're going to need to capture the data, but it's also reviewing stuff like if we're going to be flying in the restricted airspace, and if we are, we need to go through the procedures of getting the authorization to fly there from the FAA. This particular example that you see the photos of, I had to get an authorization through the FAA to fly here because it was at the end in a Class D airspace, and it was not. There was no authorization to fly there, but we did get permission to fly. We were able to fly. It was 200 feet above ground level, and it was a small site. Wasn't very big, but we got our permission to fly there. Plus, we also had to get a waiver to fly over people because there was a park in this area. We got permission to do that.
So talk a little bit about what different airspace means for the kids. Like it's
Okay.
several different classes and how are those determined?
Okay, so usually the Class B airspace is probably the most restrictive in terms of it's usually around the larger airports. And you've got restrictions in airspaces that'll give you floors or ceilings, like you can't fly anything above a certain altitude. And sometimes that altitude is 0, which means it's ground level basically in some of these airspaces. And if it's restricted, you have to go through an authorization process, and basically you're filing a flight plan with the FAA, and they review it, your flight plan, and they give you permission to fly within some restrictions. So even though rules like the Part 107 rule says you can only fly up to 400 feet above ground level, they may still restrict you to 100 feet or 200 feet above ground level. But there's different classes. Like Class B is the larger airspaces. Class C is similar to what you're seeing in the screenshot there, the picture. It's the next level. It's not quite as big and sometimes not quite as restrictive. It got different floor levels there. And then you've got Class C or Class D and E, which those vary depending on depending on what the rules the FAA set for those airspaces. But the Class D and E airspaces are for smaller, like regional airports. And usually those restrictions are only 5 miles, within 5 miles of the airport.
So in practical terms, the further down the alphabet you go, the less restricted you are.
Yes, sort of. It's kind of hard to explain. There is some different rules for them, even though Class D airspace is farther down the line in terms of restrictions. But it's actually is usually to the surface, so
Okay.
you can't usually fly in there, but you can usually get permission through the LANT system to fly at a certain altitude. It's usually works pretty well. In terms of getting authorization, it's pretty easy to get authorization there.
Thanks.
Yep. Some of our other procedures that we do, we always have a pre-flight checklist and a post-flight checklist that we go through. And the reason we do that is not only to make sure we don't forget anything. Like we want to make sure the memory card is installed in the drone. We don't want to do a whole flight capturing images and not have the images stored anywhere. But it's also for safety reasons too. A part of those checklists is like checking if the drone is damaged, or check for any kind of possible failures, mechanical failures in the drone. And then we go through a whole process of doing that. The post-flight checklist is also to just make sure, check everything is still intact and in good shape. And then one thing that we definitely go through in our training is situational awareness when you're flying. It is very, very important. We do the best we can with our preliminary flight plan to plan for any kind of obstructions like buildings, radio towers, trees, that kind of thing when we do our flight plan. when we get out to the site, we usually make adjustments because we notice something that we couldn't see from Google Maps or anything like that. If we can get somebody out of the site to send us photos, we usually do that so we get a better idea what the site is like. But situational awareness also applies to, you want to make sure you're paying attention to what other air traffic there is in the area, whether it be other airplanes, other drones, or helicopters. There's been a few situations where we were flying around the hospital that we work for, and we had to be in direct contact with their flight control station because they had a active helipad there and a lifeline. So we were in direct contact with them while we were flying, and we also had an extra person, what we call a visual observer there that was in direct contact with me. I was the pilot in command for that mission. That was in direct contact with me, and their sole purpose was just to watch the helicopter. And if the blades on the helicopter started spinning up, they would tell me, and I would immediately get the drone out of the air so that we would not cause any accidents. We definitely don't want that to happen. The other air traffic you want to be concerned, as you can see in the photo, something that actually happened to me, is birds. Most birds you just observe and make sure they're not getting in your way, but others, like this hawk in the photo, you can't really avoid because they're either hungry or they don't like the fact the drone is in the air. So this is actually a photo of a hawk that tried attacking the drone. Fortunately for me, at the last minute, he decided to peel off. I guess he decided that, oh, this isn't a bird. This is something different. It may have scared him. I don't know. But I was doing my best at this point to get the drone out of the air as quick as possible. And my first concern was to make sure it wasn't above any kind of area. If it did drop out of the sky, it wouldn't hurt anybody or cause any damage. And that was my first concern. That's what I did. I got it away from any kind of area like that, even though where we were flying, it really wasn't a dangerous type area like that. There wasn't a lot of traffic, pedestrian or vehicle traffic in that area. So safety is a very, very important thing when you're flying drones. Flying anything, really. Any questions at this point? And I'll go into what we use drones for construction.
There was a question from Benjamin that said, I have a question for Mr. Hastings. Did you ever consider joining the Civil Air Patrol as a kid? And he mentions because you wanted to become a pilot as a youngster.
No, actually, I did not know that it existed when I was a kid. But I'd also, the reason I never got into actually getting a license too is my vision is not the best. So I actually wear contacts, and it is corrected to 20/20. It's pretty good when I got my contacts in, but I was really wanting to be more of a fighter pilot than anything else, than any other kind of pilot. And when my eyes went bad, I was a little upset.
Well, and that's why you became a drone pilot.
Yep.
It was a way to get into the sky. And, if you haven't tried FPV yet, get a spotter and try that out. You almost feel like you're a fighter pilot all of a sudden.
Yeah. That's actually one of our rules at AECOM. We cannot use first-person view goggles for safety reasons. We don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. The guy that started the program that did a lot of our training was actually Air Force pilot, retired Air Force pilot, and he actually did fly Air Force drones. So he had a lot of good points to that. And one of his things is he never wanted us to do first person view because he always wanted the pilot to be able to see the drone when you're flying it. So
yeah, certainly.
Yep.
Smart thinking.
Yep. I agreed with him. Just kind of shook my head. Yes, makes sense. All right. I'll keep going here. So in construction, we have different phases in a project. So just like if you want to get a job somewhere, you got to go interview for it. And the first part of construction industry is we have what's called business development, which is basically when we go to chase a job. When somebody wants a project built, we have to interview for it. We have to give them or show them how we're going to build their project and pretty much why we're the best at it, you know. And we've used drones to help with the business development and showcase a lot of stuff, and it's made our life a lot easier selling the projects. And one of the things that we get out of it, or the things that we can use the drone for to help us do this, is we can show the existing conditions of the site, which will help us do the planning and show the owner how we're going to get the site cleared and how we're going to turn the site into what they want from what it currently exists. It helps us plan our logistics, which basically what that is helps us plan how we're going to get how we're going to do the excavation, how we're going to get traffic flow, how we're going to get materials in and off the job site. Basically it's just a plan how we're going to do this. Helps us plan it out. The other thing we can get out of it is elevation maps, or what we call like an elevation heat map, the colored maps, which you'll get to see some examples of that. It gives us an idea of how the site is sloped, how the site looks currently, if we got to do excavation, if we got to bring in dirt, or if we got to take dirt away to get what we need. And then we can also overlay models and other objects in 2D, like you see in the picture here, there's a model overlaid, or a couple models overlaid, and also a drawing overlaid on top of the drone imagery. Actually, they did a pretty good job of covering the drone imagery up. So you don't see much of it on this one, but you kind of get an idea of the surrounding area and see how their project would look when it's finished on site. So like I talked about, here's an example of existing conditions. It's the same site that you saw in the previous photo. It shows just how there's some existing buildings that are active, and it also shows some sort of what you might call ruins, or some leftovers from a previous building there in the green site to the right there. So that's something we had to take into consideration, and we got to demolish that stuff and get it off site. It also shows us that there's a creek bordering the site and there's a railroad track. So it all helps us see the whole big picture of everything. Here's an example of an elevation of a heat map. What we had to do, what we use this for, is to show the owner that their site actually slopes down towards the creek on the bottom of the picture, and how we were going to plan on building up the site to match the road, which you'll see most of the road is in purple on the top of the thing, or top of the picture here. So we had to explain that to them and show them like how their site works, and how we were going to do that. Another thing we've done with it is we had built a indoor track and field facility for a high school, and then another high school knew about the project and was considering building one very similar onto their school. And what we did is we had drone 3D models of both sites, and we put the one model from what we have built onto their existing thing so they could see what it looked like and visualize what it would look like when it was finished on their building. So that's how we kind of show owners and everything what their project's going to look like, and it helps us sell the project.
So your drones are really becoming pretty invaluable to the whole process, from the construction to the progression, all of those points that you've got to the side there. That's really cool.
Yes. So what we showed before was when we're chasing the job, and So here, for the life of the project, what you're seeing here is basically once we win the job and we're going to go build it, we can use the drone to help us, get through and get through the project and do all this. It still helps us track the construction site and plan how we're going to do things, how we're going to get in there, and we update it. We can update it throughout the life of the project if something changes, and it helps us make these changes easier and visualize it much better. It also helps us track the progression of the site. We can use the drone imagery and data from the drone to help plan to control erosion on the site. When you start excavating, you just got dirt, and sometimes rain can wash away a lot of the site, and we can plan for that and how we're going to control and correct that. It also gives us a snapshot on a specific date of what was completed and what was there. And it helps us, basically just keep a archive or a log of everything that was on site on that day.
Well, it's fun to see that progression, and I think you had
Yeah.
some videos of showing that progression throughout. Could we see some of those?
Yes, we can go to that. Let me pull up that video. Hang on one second.
And I'll just say, I didn't even realize that drones played such a big part this early on in the process. I thought that they would be used to help kind of coordinate the construction. I didn't realize they were used even before the job had begun or even before the job had been secured.
Yes. Yeah. We use it for everything. Okay.
And it seems like it's become an invaluable tool, really.
Yes. We have we've also used it to solve problems too, and there was questions that have come up on jobs, like whether something was there or not on that day, or nobody was really sure if it was there. And I had just flown the site a couple days before, and I was able to pull up those images, and everybody was able to see it.
Oh, it was there. Cool.
Yeah, and we were able to solve that issue right away, and
Yeah.
basically come up with a solution at that moment.
So if somebody drops their hammer and can't find it, you can help them out, maybe.
Maybe, yes, something like that. Okay, I can't seem to find the video. Could you pull that video up from the site? It's not playing for me.
I think we're working on that right now.
Yeah, no problem. While he works on that video, and if it pops up, that's great. But there was a question. The question was, does your drone have OcuSync, or is it just using a basic frequency for control?
Actually, that particular one, the Phantom 4 Pro V2 does have OcuSync. That's the dual channel system I was talking about previously. It runs at different gigahertz frequencies and it helps cut through the interference.
And is that for both the video feed and the flight controls, or is it one or the other?
I think it's for both, honestly. I think it works for both. There is times where the video feed gets interfered with, but the drone still is flying, and you still have control over the drone. So you don't necessarily lose control of the drone. You just don't have a video feed, which that's happened a few times too. I've also had my iPad overheat on me and shut off, which was not a very fun day.
Not ideal.
Yeah. But that is kind of one of those contingency plans that we train and we deal with in our training and all that stuff. So it wasn't too scary, but it was the first time it actually happened to me when I was out on the field. So I was a little nervous about it, but it was all right. We didn't have any issues. And then I basically stuck the iPad inside in front of an AC vent to cool it off.
Right back down.
So we could keep going. I found it. Let me go ahead and play it. Let me get it. Hang on a second. There we go. Everybody see it. I'll go ahead and just play it.
Cool. Oh, so this is for a school here.
Yes. This was actually an elementary school we built. So this was one of the first projects we did where we were able to use the drone through the entire life of the project. So, and these videos you're seeing at the beginning was actually shot with the drone, but it wasn't flying. Somebody was carrying it. So there's another use for the drone.
And for some of the kids who might not know about some of these drones, like there's what's called a gimbal on here, so that makes it almost like a steady cam, or exactly like a steady cam, so that you can carry a drone through and get some of these really smooth shots. It's really neat.
Yes. So you can see here we did a video every month, and you can see the progress throughout the site, how it changes as we build it.
So you can totally see how a drone is so useful in showing like the progress, because, for month to month, you can forget a lot of the accomplishments you've made at a construction site. And by using this, it's a really quick, clear example of look how much we've done, look where we've been, and look where we're going. That's pretty cool.
Yes. And another thing it's useful for, like the videos that you're seeing here, when we're shooting these videos and we kind of go through it, we can use it to catch possible safety issues, which is on the job site, which has come in handy a couple times. That some issues you may not actually see or notice from the ground or even standing next to it. This is an example of the 3D models that we can create out of it, and this is just a flip progression too. You can kind of see how the site grows and is completed as it goes.
Now, are you just using the cameras for that, or using LiDAR or anything like that?
Just the cameras. This is all created from photos. The 3D meshes are what we call a 3D mesh, or a 3D model is created from just photos. And there's a program that does all that processing. And it helps us. And that's the 3D model is kind of the part that we use to overlay on top of other things and bring in together that you saw, where some of those 3D meshes, we can take a screenshot of it and show it, or we can fly around in the model too. We can get in close and see some detail that you wouldn't necessarily catch from farther out. But I'll continue here.
Yeah.
Again, some of the things that we can use it for is we can also get a 2D, like just an overview 2D map of the site, what we call an ortho, and we can overlay drawings on top of that, and we can see on site, and I'll show you an example of that, of how close the building is going into where it's supposed to be, and we can use it to track other things too. Like I said before, we can get a 3D model out of it, which we can use in various ways. We can actually pull volumes of dirt and like a hole too, like on site, and see how much dirt we either need to remove or how much we need to bring in to fill in a hole. It comes in handy for that, because then it helps us plan for how many trucks we need to bring in to do all that planning. Again, like I said, we can use it to catch safety issues on the job site. I'll go through. Oh, there we go. So here's the like a 2D ortho map that's created from it. Again, we got a dated snapshot. We can track the progression of the site, and we can use this to help plan the construction site planning and all that. Then we can also, this is an example of the logistics, like a logistics plan that we come up with. We can overlay some other images and put in some text and show how we're going to handle the site. We can show traffic flow, where we're going to put all the office and construction trailers, where all the soil is going to go, and even where all the workers are going to park on the site. This is kind of an example of all the planning that we're talking about here. Here's an example of overlaying a drawing on top of the drone image that we've put together here. And we can use this to see how close utilities are going in. If we have a drawing with pipes and electrical lines and all that going in, we can overlay it and see how accurate it's going in on site. We can use it to check our building pads and make sure that the foundations are going in the correct place. So that becomes very useful and a good, quick look or visual of how well the site is doing. 3D models, things that we can get out of that is just accurate measurements. We can get areas, lengths, volumes out of it. We can use it to show progress like we showed in the video. We can get the 3D models also created from a point cloud that's created from the images that the drone captures. And then here's an example of like an elevation map. We can use it for pre-construction excavation planning, erosion control, and track the excavation project on a site, and also track any kind of erosion that might be happening on the site. Here's an example of pile volume. So inside of a program, we bring it in. This particular site, they were curious to see the big, huge dirt pile you see on the left there. They were curious to see how much was still on site and then how much they excavated, which the green on the right, it's kind of hard to see because the indication in the program is kind of covering up, but there's a hole underneath that. And I was able to get volumes out of that so I could see how much we had excavated out of the site and how much was left on the site. So we knew how much they had processed and hauled off at that point. That was an exercise that our project team there locally wanted done and wanted to know. So it becomes very useful in that case. And then another, after the project's done, we do something like the video that you saw before. Is we can use it for marketing. We can show the progress of the site. We can show how good of a job we've done, and we've also shown what kind of a summation of a big project. This is a huge project that we did for the Tennis Association. This is where the U.S. Open is held in New York City. And the majority of the drone footage here is from the drone. And we were able to fly the site and capture it. We spent 2 days out there capturing video.
Once again, I'm sure the waiver process was interesting in dealing with the FAA and making sure that you could fly in such a busy airspace, busy area.
Yes, this particular area, we actually were pretty close to LaGuardia Airport. The job site was really close to LaGuardia Airport, but we got a hold of them and worked it out with them and got approval to fly there. And we also, again, because this was actually the week before the U.S. Open, so there was tons of people there setting everything up and getting ready for the event. So we also went through the process of getting a waiver of operating over people, and we got approval to do that. But we made sure that we got everything we needed. Like I said, we were out there for 2 days, and it wasn't. It was about like 95 degrees both days, so it was a pretty
Another
rough 2 days.
torture for your laptop.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. But it was a good time. It was a very good experience. We learned a lot that day. And that's pretty much it. So covers a lot. We're discovering we're actually still researching and discovering new ways of using the drone. Um, there is a few things that we would like to use the drone for, but our particular drone does not have that capability. Um, and some of the ones that do have that capability get really expensive, and our program isn't quite big enough yet to afford that. But it's definitely something that is still useful in the construction industry. And examples of that are like using drones that have thermal cameras, and we can do envelope inspections with those, and roof inspections with that to make sure we don't have any leaks or anything like that. And also just inspecting structures in sort of a more dangerous area. Like an example is we'd like to have a drone that has a big zoom camera on it, so that we can inspect something that was installed. Um, so we don't have to get so close to the building, but also sometimes on the job sites, like I said, we have large tower cranes. And sometimes when we're doing these flights, they're active and they're swinging back and forth with their booms, and we don't want to be within the arc of the crane, because we don't want the crane knocking the drone out of the air, or our drone causing problems and doing that. So if we can get a camera that has a large zoom, we can stay farther away and still do our inspection that we need to. But like I said, drones that have that capability get really expensive, and we just haven't been able to convince the higher ups here to let us buy one.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, hopeful.
Well, I know that I've learned a lot about the way that drones are used in projects, things that I'd never even considered. So I want to take the time to thank you for taking the time to be with us today to talk about it. It sounds like it's not really going anywhere anytime soon.
Nope. It's a lot of fun
And
though. I enjoy it.
well, I want to close by kind of going back to something you said very early on in the presentation. You mentioned that there was a professor who first talked to you about getting involved with drone flying as a career. Can you tell us, can you remember, is there anything that they said that was particularly memorable or particularly inspiring to you that maybe you want to pass along to our viewers and our campers who are watching this right now?
Well, I don't know if there was anything particular that he said. It was just that he was really interested in it. Like, he was excited about the technology too, and then he started talking about it, and then we both sort of started diving into it. And I thought that's what was really cool, is that he actually was interested in all the different types of technology that is becoming part of the construction industry. And it just so happened that it was drones came up in the conversation, and he got all excited, and because he was wanting to also start a class that was actually a drone class, like teaching students how to fly, and what we could use the data for in construction. So that was also part of his research. But
Well, and this was at Purdue, right?
yeah, it was Purdue.
So Purdue has done the collegiate drone racing challenge as well. Like, they've really kind of jumped into some of the FPV racing on the hobby side of things, and maybe the competition side some. And
Yes.
I have to imagine 5 years ago or so, when you were having this conversation, who would have known just how important drones were to this construction space? And to your point as well, like, what's in the future, what's coming? Like, it's a really neat opportunities that are arising.
Yes, and definitely part of my job as the lead drone pilot is in running the program, is I got to kind of keep track of what new is coming out, and it changes like every month, or every week. There's new information coming out and new ideas, and it is a little rough to keep up with, but it's actually still exciting though, because you hear something, you're like, oh man, that'd be so cool. And when I started working here, like I said, 4 years ago, it was not even, drones weren't that big that in the construction industry, and it's just exploded since. And there's just, in the past couple of years, there's just been so much support in terms of programs and software and things for the construction industry using drones, that it's made life on us a lot easier, and actually more interesting. And more fun to do this, you know. But what's for my part, what I enjoy is that getting in on it on the ground floor, and I'm actually kind of learning as I go. So I don't really have too many people to go to and say, hey, how do you do this? You know, I've got to sit there and kind of figure it out myself. And
Sure. Well, hey, anytime we can be a resource for you, of course, feel free to reach out. But it's been really enlightening, I think, from my perspective, to see how you use these drones and really how important they've become for you and also the company you work for.
Yes. Yeah, we always get excited when we get a new opportunity to try something new with the drone. My boss is always kind of, getting excited about it too. He's like, "Hey, do you think we could do this?" And it's like, "We'll give it a try." And just a little example here, the photo that you see in the background on the slide here is actually our office in Indy.
Oh, wow.
So we can do we got enough space, so I can do some testing. Whenever I want to test something out, I just kind of fly our office, and this is a little 3D model that I put together from one of the flights, just testing out stuff.
Yeah, and at first glance, it looks like just a photo or an image or something like that. But the fact that you've added so much data, so much 3D modeling to it in all of those examples, it's really cool.
Yes. This is actually the 3D model just from the photos. There's nothing added to this. It's just what it processed and put together. So it's getting better as we go, though, too.
Very cool. Sounds like there's a lot to be excited about.
Yes.
Well, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today and sharing your work and sharing what you do. And I'm sure that our viewers have learned a lot. I know I've learned a lot. So this has been very exciting. And Junior Camp is continuing tomorrow as well. So make sure you're watching your emails, making sure you're remembering where those links are, because we'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next construction project. And of course, we will be returning tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern with another guest speaker with a lot of cool stories to share from a long lifetime of being a member of the AMA. So hope to see you then. And until then, have a great rest of your day and enjoy your Bernoulli airfoil that we made from this morning. We'll see you tomorrow.